Have you ever been confused about God's direction for you, His direction in your life and for your life? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to Stonemont Church. It's good to have you here. I heard a story about a pastor who had gone to some event, and they were going to say grace before the meal, and he turned to an old farmer and asked him if he would like to say grace. The farmer nodded, bowed his head, stood there for a minute in his overalls and flannel shirt, and closed his eyes and said, "Lord, I hate buttermilk." And the pastor kind of opened an eye and looked and thought, well, that's an unusual way to start a prayer. But he continued to listen, and the farmer said, "And I can't stand lard." And the pastor opened his eyes again, and he kind of looked over and thought, Does this man truly understand what I've asked, to say grace before the meal? And he noticed that several other people were looking around too and kind of wondering, where's this going? Then the man said, "And I truly hate the taste of flour." And by now, everybody was kind of looking around, thought, what in the world? But then the farmer continued, and he says, "But when you put them all together and bake them, I love the biscuits they make." That's a lot like God's will. We're often confused about what's going on. It seems like sometimes we try our best, we're working our hardest, and things just aren't working out. Or we have problems, and we try to work our way through them. And we do our best, we think about it, we figure what should we do, and it sometimes it doesn't make it any better, sometimes it seems to make it worse. And we wonder, what in the world is going on? The harder I try, it seems like the worse things get. Well, there's a good reason for that. We think that we're doing what we should because we're thinking with our earthly minds as opposed to allowing ourselves to be led by God. God is very plain in these things, and He gives us instructions throughout the entire Bible. And I just want to touch on a few here that will point us in the right direction. We need to realize that the solution is not found in our wisdom, but in God's guidance and direction. So we'll start with, in the 3rd chapter of Proverbs, the great book of wisdom, we're going to read verses 5 and 6, and it says, and I'm going to read these today from the King James, because they're easily understood. They're verses with which most people are familiar, and they don't take a lot of translative efforts to make them understandable. So Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, and probably most of you have heard this. "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths." Pretty plain, right? But let's read it again. Trust in the Lord. That's the thing. Trust. Trust in Him. If you take your questions, you take your problems, you take your life to Him, then trust Him. The problem that a lot of people have is that they want to take their problems or their requests to God, but they want Him to solve it according to their own way. Are you familiar with that Garth Brooks song where he thanks God for unanswered prayers? Right? How many of us can thank God for unanswered prayers? Have you made them? Well, if you haven't, you're the only person in the world that hasn't, probably. Okay? Most of us have, and usually when we're younger, we'll pray, "Oh, Lord, if you'll just do this for me, if you'll just do that, I'll never ask anything else for as long as I live, because I know this is what's going to make me happy. You know, could be a young lady, a young man, a car, you know what? Lord, please, I know what's best for me. I know what'll make me happy. But we don't. He says, excuse me, I had to look out the window there for a second. So that's the first thing. Lean not unto thine own understanding. You don't know what's best for you. I don't know what's best for me. Oh, I've thought I have many, many times. I remember, and I've told this story before, I remember in my late teens going to my mother and telling her, kind of admitting to her, I said, I've had a great revelation. It seems that when I do things the way that I think I ought to do them, things don't always work out as well as I'd hoped. But when I do things the way that you have suggested, things just seem to work out. It's almost like magic. Well, that, of course, was the result of the wisdom that comes with years. And how far above our parents is God? So it says trust. If we take things to Him, which we should, trust in Him with all thine heart. Don't trust Him just a little bit. Don't say, oh, Lord, I trust you as long as I see things going on kind of the way that I expect them to, or that I think they're going to work out. I'll trust you as long as you're doing what I think you ought to be doing, right? No. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. We don't understand. We think we do. But God is, we're going to get to another verse here in a minute, He explains, His understanding, His thinking is so far above ours that we have a choice. We can lean unto our own understanding or on His. Lean not unto thine own understanding. In all ways acknowledge Him. Bring Him into every part of your life, every part of your decision-making process. Bringing into your problems, into your successes. All successes come from Him. The problems usually come from us. The successes come from Him. And He shall direct thy paths. Okay, so if you trust Him with all your heart, you stay away from understanding what you think is right in life. You acknowledge Him, you include Him in everything, He will direct your path. Okay, let's go to a second one here. We're going to go to Proverbs. We're still in Proverbs. We're going to go to the 14th chapter, verse 12. This is another verse that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. I have to say that this verse comes to me very often because I have seen it so often in my own life and in others. And it says, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man. Now, what does that mean? That means, well, we in our great wisdom, right, we think about things, we have a situation, a problem, something we want, whatever it is, and I say, oh, okay, well, that's what that seems right to me. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man. But there's a second part here, like there is in every proverb. But, you know the old saying, everything that comes before a but doesn't count. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Now, that certainly applies to sin. Very often, we sin thinking in our momentary humanity, well, we're always human, but in seeing through the lens of our human desires. Seems right to me, seems good to me, let's do this. The end thereof are the ways of death. Could be the death of a dream, could be the death of your plans, it could be, but this is actually referring to the death of your spirit, the death of your soul. Everybody, from the smallest infraction to the greatest, can find ways to excuse their behavior. Right? That's right, and that's what we do. There is a way, or we could say there are ways, which seemeth right unto a man in our limited understanding, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Let's go now to another one. It's in Romans. It's going to be chapter 8, verse 28. And it says, "And we know that all things work together for good." Now, that many people stop right there. And this is why this particular verse is so often misunderstood by people. People latch on to this when they're going through problems. And it's kind of the verse on which the idea, well, everything happens for a reason. Okay, well, that's, yes, everything does happen for a reason, but sometimes that reason is our own stupidity or greed or whatever. So it's not that people have this idea that everything happens for a reason when they're having horrible things happen to them. By saying, well, there's going to be good in this. Well, if it's directed by us, that's not so. We can just keep on making bad decisions, and we're not. Good is not going to come out on the other end of it. So we can't stop there because that's not the end of the verse. Again, and we know that all things work together for good. Here's the qualifier. Here's the end of it. To them that love God, and there's more, to them who are called according to his purpose. Okay, that means a lot more than just, well, all things work together for good, right? There's a reason for everything. Everything happens for a reason. Yeah. Okay, let's read that all together. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. If you have sought God's direction, if you are called to his purpose, all things are going to work together for good. But they don't just work together. They don't just come together. God brings them together. Right? Okay. Let's go to one final verse. And we're going to find this in Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 through 11. And this explains why we don't understand. Right? We don't understand the ways of God. The ways of God are perfect. We're human. Our ways are imperfect, to say the least. Right? How often have you found yourself working and doing those things and just working? Things aren't working out, just like we started this message with. Well, this explains it. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. This is God, the Lord talking. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain cometh down, and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, that it may give seed to the sower, and bread to the eater. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. Well, let's do that one more time, because it's kind of difficult, I know, when you're hearing Scripture to understand all of it. And this is why I do encourage you, go get your Bible, and I'll read again the different, at the end I'll read the verses that we shared. when you read through it yourself, you're able to kind of go, oh, wait, okay, let me back up and get that again. When you're hearing it, it's easier for it to come and go. So let's do that one more time. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain, listen here, for as the rain cometh down, and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, that it may give seed to the sower, and bread to the eater. Watch this now. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, meaning it will have an effect, but it shall accomplish that which I please. His will be done. And it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. That means your life. There have been so many times in my life to where I was trying to accomplish something, or I had a problem. And sometimes those problems were, maybe I was being attacked by someone. I don't mean physically attacked. Or maybe there were other problems. And a couple of times they seemed almost insurmountable. You may be familiar with Abraham Lincoln's quote, "There have been many times when I have been driven to my knees in prayer simply because I had nowhere else to go." I've been in those situations to where I had tried everything that I could think. Tried everything. I had fought hard. I had worked hard. I had come against the problems of the world in my own human way, trying to respond. And I have to admit that I'm a fighter. I try to control that. The older I get, the easier it is. But it's not me doing it. It's the Lord. But I tried to fight back against those things in the world that were trying to destroy me. And it wouldn't work. Oh, it would work to a certain extent, but it was simply keeping a problem going. And some days it seemed like I was winning, and other days the problem was winning. But when I finally came to the point in my life that I turned these things over to God, I saw miracles happen, and I'm not saying that lightly. When I got out of the way and asked God to help me remove myself and simply listen for His direction, to let Him handle it and do what He directed me to do. And sometimes those things didn't make any sense at all to me. Because why? As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than yours, and my thoughts higher than yours. Guess what? I discovered God's thoughts are higher than my own, as much as I may have thought of myself at the time. It didn't make any sense at all. And I would see solutions coming seemingly from nowhere in ways that I would never have imagined if I had sat down and tried to construct the best plan, not only that would solve the problem, but that would bring me greater success and blessings in the future. There's no way that I could have done it. When I gave it up to God, and I says, this is bigger than me, that means it's yours, and I'm just a player in it. Tell me the parts you want me to play, and your will be done. The results were amazing. Simply amazing. When you take yourself out of the role of God and let Him be God, and you be His instrument. The song He will play on you is beyond anything you could have imagined. So when you taste that buttermilk, I don't like it either. And when you are served that lump of lard, or when you're given that bowl of flour, don't look at them as individual things that you can't stand. Look forward to the biscuits as God puts those together and gives you the real blessing that He has always intended for you once you got out of His way. You all have a great week. Think about God's purpose for your life. Give yourself over to Him. Ask Him for His direction. And then be patient as you wait to obey that. Until we meet again, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace.